Hi, I'm Tara from the Marathon Mates. On this episode of The Flying Runner, we are joined by Mikki Williden, PhD. Mikki is a very well-known nutritionist from New Zealand who also hosts a twice-weekly podcast called Mikkipedia. Over the years, Mikki has helped hundreds of people achieve their running goals. In addition to her work in nutrition, Mikki is an avid runner, having recently completed the Boston Marathon and the Southern Lakes Ultra Race in Central Otago, New Zealand. On this episode, Mikki will share her vast knowledge with us as we aim to unlock how we should manage our nutrition as runners. We've got the experience and the knowledge to answer your questions, as we are the only podcast for six-star World Major Marathon medalists co-hosts. So sorry. And this is the Flying Runner podcast. Are you ready to run? Let's go.
Welcome to the thrilling world of the Flying Runner, brought to you by the Marathon Mates.
Hi everyone and welcome back to The Flying Runner. I'm Tara from the Marathon Mates and this is episode number 104. As many of our regular listeners would know, we were plagued with technical problems last time we tried to connect with our very special guest that we have on tonight. But I'm glad to say the technical gods are working with us tonight. And I'm very happy to say that we are joined by Mikki Williden, PhD. Mikki has a Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition, a Bachelor of Physical Education from the University of Otago in Dunedin, and she attained a Master's in Science with Human Nutrition as her major, with first-class honours in 2003, focusing on the development of a childhood obesity prevention program. As a registered nutritionist, she has been privately consulting with clients since 2006 and has worked with a vast number of people with different health and performance goals. In 2011, she obtained her PhD after completing her doctoral thesis in health and productivity in the New Zealand workforce. In addition to her day job, Mikki also hosts a twice-weekly podcast called Mikkipedia, which dives deep into the topics of nutrition, longevity, fitness, and health. She is also the creator of Mondays Matter, a successful fat loss group program that utilizes evidence-based techniques to support body composition goals and has helped thousands of people. She is passionate about helping to translate science into practice to help people meet their health goals, and is a regular contributor to digital and media platforms, as well as having an active social media presence. That was a mouthful for me. Thank you, Tim. And tonight, we are very fortunate to be joined by her on The Flying Runner. Mikki, welcome to our show.
I am just so stoked to be here, particularly after the build-up of last time. I feel really honoured to be invited on. So thank you, Tara, Tim, Lucia, and Tony.
Excellent.
You're by far the most overqualified person we've ever had on the show.
Hang on, Fleur, you've had Fleur Cushman, haven't you?
Oh, Fleur, yes. She's very qualified.
There you go. Yeah. Coming and trying to fill big boots.
Oh, thank you so much for that. So, and obviously tonight we also have our regular hosts. So my marathon mates, Lucia, Tony, and of course Tim. Guys, welcome to the show, and more importantly, how has your week been? I'll start with you, Tony.
Oh, okay. I had a pretty quiet week. I love my tapers, as you know. So I think I ran once midweek, and the run on the weekend was 16K for me, and Sharon did 15. So feeling really good. A little bit tight in the calves today, but overall, it is what it is. And the marathon comes up on Sunday, so no doubt I'm looking forward to getting it done.
Absolutely, as we all are, that's for sure. And Lucia, your training run, I saw that you finished yours off with a strawberry milkshake this morning.
I celebrated probably the worst training block I've had out of any of my marathons. I stopped and got a strawberry milkshake to celebrate it. I'm like, what's done is done. I'll pull it off over the weekend. Won't be pretty, but I'm going to get it done. So a couple of runs this week, nice and easy. It's been a nice taper week.
Lucia, it might have been a bad training run for you, but I think it was a really beneficial training run for coffee shops, ice cream shops, all of those shops donut shops. Those, I think it was a very good training block for them.
I'm doing my bit to help the economy.
You are aware that Mikki is a nutritionist and she does not agree with this as her post-run recovery. So
to be fair, if I interject, I don't care. I mean, I care, but as long as you're not paying me, you can eat what you like. So go for it.
Love it.
And we all love a taper week. Tim, you've done very little this week, haven't you?
Yeah, been very busy with work this week, so I haven't done a lot of midweek runs this week. In fact, I haven't done any midweek runs. Did a park run yesterday, which was good. Went out to Sandgate, met up with a couple of friends out there, and I got to run by myself without Tara because they ran with Tara. So it was good to get some pace. So, a sub 25-minute park run at about 80% pace for me, and I was happy with that. I could have gone faster. The body's pulled up well, and I feel pretty good after that. So, yeah, this time next week, guys, it's all over. 4 races in 2 days, all done and dusted. Well, 1 for you, Tony. 2 for you, Tony, but 4 for Lucia, Tara, and myself. So, bring it on.
Yep, it'll be good. I ran park run yesterday. I did do a couple of midweek runs, but nothing interesting. And I was fortunate enough to run with 2 of my cardiac athletes, Lisa, who also has a pacemaker, and her husband, Steve. They're both cardiac athletes, ran with me to make sure so Tim could run by himself. And that was actually my best run that I've had since I got my pacemaker put in. So what am I up to now? 8 weeks since I had my pacemaker put in, and best run that I've had. So I'm actually feeling a bit more confident for next weekend that I may be able to get through all the races. Maybe not. But we'll see how we go. And how is your training going this week, Mikki? Have you been training for anything in particular?
Yeah, so unlike all of you, I've had my biggest week in my training block, actually. So me and my hubster are a bit like Tara and Tim, and maybe Tony and his wife. I'm not sure, and I'm not sure about your husband, Lucia, but we do our weekend training together. So we are doing an event called the Grand to Grand, which is the Grand Canyon to Bryce Canyon, out of Kanab, over in the States in September. So we just clicked off a 36K run, hike, and 22Ks this morning. So, and about maybe 8.5 hours running across the weekend. And so it feels really good actually to sort of, like, I've got a little bit of a tight knee, which is just, I think, tight quads, but your confidence always increases. And I was listening to you, Tara, talk about your confidence. Like when you are able to achieve a certain thing, you're like, cool, this is our first big block, and I'm away. We're both away next weekend, so it will be a natural sort of deload week next weekend. So it's really good to sort of get that all sort of wrapped up, because that event is I think probably maybe 12 weeks away now. So pretty exciting.
Absolutely. And those confidence boost runs make all the difference, don't they? They just fill you with that thought that I can do this. What I've signed up for is not unachievable anymore, which is the most important thing. So I guess I want to get on to talking to you, Mikki. So I'm going to throw it over to Tim quickly for the news so that we can come back to you and have a chat to you. So Tim, what's been happening around the world of news this week?
Thanks, Tara. So this week the news has come out of Sydney Marathon that they've announced the elite women's field. So I presume the elite men's field will be announced this week coming. In the women's field, they've got a really good field assembled. They have Safan Hassan, who is the current Olympic champion. She also won in London, and she's also won in Chicago Marathon. She is heading the field, and I know, Tony, you're a bit of a fanboy here of Safan Hassan. So she will be heading the field. Her personal best is 2 hours 13. She'll be chased hard by Bridget Kosgei, who is coming along. Bridget is a former world record holder, and her PB is 2:14:04. And then there will be a field of other Ethiopians. There's about 6 other Ethiopians that follow Bridget Kosgei, a couple of Japanese runners. And from an Australian perspective, heading the field is Jess Stenson, who won the Commonwealth Games, came 12th in the Olympics. And following her, the next Aussies are Lisa Waitman. So we'll see that battle between Lisa Waitman and Jess Stenson, who had a falling out last year when the Olympic teams were announced. So it's going to be interesting to see. Leanne Pompiani will also be there from Australia. So it's a world-class field, what I'm seeing there, and I think it's going to be a really good event to see Sydney. And then throw on top of that, as we know, in the men's field, we're going to see Elliot Kipchoge coming in there as well. So, guys, yep.
Sorry, if I can just add one thing. I think one thing they failed to announce 2 other elites, which I think is a bit of a shame they haven't announced it. Tara and I. They forgot to announce the 2 elites from Flying Runner podcast. So hopefully hopefully Tim and Tony make the men's next week.
We're actually the elites for the mid-pack to backpack runners. So.
And I'm literally right at the back.
Yeah, I think when they list the elites from the fastest to the slowest, I'm at 20,000 and something. So
Yeah.
But
finish lines, not finish time.
Yes, but it is an elite field. And guys, I don't know what you reckon of it, but I reckon that's a pretty good field.
It's an absolute corker. There's never been such quality in any Australian marathon history, and it just proves the power now that Sydney is a major, that star attraction. So hopefully that will get the crowds out as well.
Yeah, I can't wait, to be honest. And if Sydney doesn't get the crowds this year, there's something wrong with the people of New South Wales, and we know that every state of origin time anyway. But this is a world major with Kipchoge and Safan, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the Expo program now, because I'd love to. I think Safan is just one of the most authentic athlete in the world today, almost naive in her approach to how she does things. And it'd be so good to listen to her in a conversation. So I'm looking forward to that. So it should be great.
And sorry, just one more quick thing. And for those listeners who haven't seen the clip, Google Safan London Marathon victory, because she's the one. After she finished, she's got a towel over her head, questioning her life choices. Why did I get up? Why did I run the marathon? It is such an hysterical video. So highly recommend everyone watch it.
Yeah, we've all had.
Sounds like all of us, really. That's what through our heads every time we finish an event, or before an event. Why on earth do I do this? Afterwards, we remember, but yeah.
So it's good to see that the elites feel the same as us regular runners.
Yeah. Yeah. Just the second and last bit of news I've got for this week. This week, if you haven't been watching your social medias or mainstream media, there was a new world record set here in southeast Queensland with a backyard ultra event called the Dead Cow Gully. As we know, the backyard ultras are a concept where you run 100 miles over the course of 24 hours, but the race keeps going on and on and on till the last person stands or runs. Each loop is therefore equivalent to about 6.7 kilometers of running, and every hour a new loop starts, and you have to be on the start line for every loop. This year at Dead Cow Gully, as I said, a new world record was set when Phil Gore ran 119 yards. That's 119 hours of running, which is 1 hour short of 5 days of running non-stop. That's 6.7 kilometers for 119 hours equals 797.3 kilometers run in those 5 days. And it's a new world record, as I said. In second place, so these things don't happen. Phil Gore would not have got that world record if he didn't have somebody who was there till the end with him. And in second place was New Zealand's Sam Harvey. Sam ran the 118 yards. He lined up for the start of the 119th yard and ran about 100 meters and collapsed. He was that exhausted and that tired. He literally passed out, fell straight to the ground. The others picked him up. And in the meantime, Phil was able to complete the yard and take the victory. An interesting stat, Phil's slowest yard that he ran was the first yard, and his fastest yard that he ran was his 119th yard. So it's a crazy event, and I've said this before, and Mikki, it's one that I'd like you to have a bit of a say on as well. I don't know how you would fuel for an event that you don't know when the end of the event is, where you might get anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes of break time per loop, whether you go hard and fast or whether you go nice and slow and turn it into a continuous run for a few hours. There's a lot of strategy in it, and the fueling would be number one, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, Tim, and I don't have that experience either personally with running a backyard ultra. I don't like the idea of not sleeping, if I'm honest. But I do think that people like the likes of Sam Harvey and Phil, and of course anyone that managed to get to even the 24-hour sort of like mark, like they're just made of something a little bit different, right? And so with the fueling strategy, you have to consider fatigue. Like one, you've got to train your gut like for that event. But I do think that those elite in our sport, and not just elite in terms of their ability to turn their legs over and run really fast, they're actually got elite, like their digestive capacity, I do think, and I'm not the only one, is actually like next level as well, you know? So some of those high numbers we see elites hitting with regards to carbohydrate intake, it's just not possible for mere mortals like us middle-aged backpackers, really. So you've got to consider fatigue, because that's going to limit digestibility. So you have to have things on board that you can use. Fat metabolism would play a part in it. So your ability to burn your own fat stores whilst running, and this is not a given just because you run, that's something that you need to train. Flavor fatigue as well, like how far can you go on espresso flavored gels? I don't know, not that far. And then you've got to have real confidence. I mean, there's so much more to say about it, but you do have to have confidence in not just plan A, but plan B and plan C as well. And that's regardless of what event you do. So you don't sort of, you are unable to complete what you plan to do in plan A, but you know you've got something else up your sleeve, because as we know as runners, a lot of it is your mindset in that space.
That's it. Yeah, it is a challenge, and you're right. I think those guys are just built differently. That's why they are the world's best. Yeah. Sam Harvey, though, is an ambassador for our favourite brand, Currans. So he's been pumping the Currans day and night in between all those yards. So, well done to both Sam and Phil. They ran essentially, I think, the last 18 hours or so together. So, yeah, always a challenge. So.
Well, I guess if you do want to try and beat those records and you want to try Currans, you can actually purchase it through their website. And if you want to give it a try, we actually have a promotional code, Flying Runner 20, and that will give you 20% off your first order if you do want to try it and become a backyard ultra champion. So see how you go.
Yep. And that's the news this week, Tara.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tim. So I guess this is the part of the podcast that we're actually looking forward to the most. Mikki, I would love to introduce you as not only just the nutritionist, but also as a runner yourself. You understand that runner's body. You understand how we all need to fuel differently, and every person has a different need. So, Mikki, we're just going to throw around some questions and get you to answer it best of your ability. And as you know more than anybody else here, you've got the right answers. So let's answer a couple of questions to start off with, but we'll ask a couple of questions. What about your running journey? What made you start running and why did you get into it?
I love this question. And also I'm just laughing because it's already like 21 minutes in and I've just gotten started. I'm a talker, but anyway, I'll do my best to keep it short. So Funny story. When I was about 12, no, I would have been 13 or 14 in our summer holidays. So like you guys, so our summer holiday over January, December through to February. My mother and I, one, we went on a diet because that's what you did with your mum. That's bonding. That was bonding back in the 80s. I'm not sure, or early 90s. But also a lot of my friends were playing basketball. And in fact, I was just off third form going into fourth form. And my PE teacher was also head of the women's basketball team of actually like New Zealand at the time too. So he was, he was very sort of high up in basketball. So I would jump in and play basketball with my friends. But I was, I was a bookworm. I used to write myself letters to get out of PE. I was not into activity at all. And he sort of saw me on the court and he's like, Mikki, I just don't know that you're cut out for basketball. And this was at the end of third form going into fourth form. And while that could have broken me, instead what it did was spur me on. And I'm like, I'm going to show you, Mr. Dickel. I'm going to spend my summer getting out, getting fit, getting really great at basketball. And over the course of that summer, I started being more active. I started thinking about my nutrition. Not that I'm suggesting mothers and daughters diet. Do not worry. That is not but that's just what we did, So all of these things sort of came together that by the time I got back to fourth form and we had phys ed, there was something we did called, I think it's called the beep test. And my previous best at the beep test was like 7 or something. And then that very first phys ed class when we did the beep test, I got 11. And I remember Mr. Dickel's eyes popping out of his head. And that was the proudest moment. And I just really got the bug. I mean, he was right. I was still terrible at basketball and always will be. But that's how I started running. And I'm really grateful to him because those kind of comments, again, they're not ones that adults should throw around lightly because they can really land most often quite negatively and really affect you as adults even now. But for whatever reason, I was just ready to hear, that I needed to do a little different. And that sort of spurred me on. And other than, I would say, just a few snippets of years across the last 35, I've basically been running ever since.
Awesome. Now, you recently ran the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experience and also your thoughts on the Expo, because we've got very different thoughts about the Expo with Boston. So curious to see your thoughts on the race and also the Expo.
Okay, well, I love this, Ushia. So if it's okay, I'll start with the last question first because it will be fairly easy. I've only done one other major, the New York. I'm not as experienced as all of you, and I cannot wait to continue to get my big, medals, 6 medals, plus the one in the middle, not quite sure, big thing. So I actually loved the Expo because compared to a lot of the ones that we have locally here in New Zealand, and I've done the Gold Coast a few times, and I've done Sydney, like it was just bigger and better. And I picked myself up an Adidas Samba shoe that has the gold Boston written on it, and I was just so thrilled. And then, of course, beside the Expo, you've got the street of all the other brands, and we picked up some great bargains. So I quite liked it, actually. I'm interested to know what your mates thought. But the event itself was just next level amazing. So we arrived on Saturday and it was so hot. It was like 28 degrees coming over from New York, where we flew in a couple of nights earlier. So the entire, you're just jet lagged as anything, but you don't care because the work is done to get to the marathon. Once you're there, you're just cruising. And on the Sunday, it was freezing. It was like 11 degrees and windy as. And then on Monday, it was perfect. And we were picked up at a hotel in Natick, which is about 50 minutes out of Boston, but on the course, yep. And so it was just so streamlined, and everyone was delighted that both Barry and I, who's my husband, we were both doing it together. Like everyone was just so thrilled, who we talked to, like, oh my goodness, both of you. And in fact, we had enough time to have breakfast. We got through, which was obviously on the run, on the go, but we started at about 10:50, and then it was just a smooth run all the way back into Boston, and the crowds were amazing, and the course was spectacular, and it's such a great way to see the city. And I mean, you guys, I have goosebumps thinking about it. It was just so special, and we just loved it. And I had a slight dip at about maybe 26K. And, you just have a slight kind of, because, you're over halfway, but you've still got like so long to go. Then I just popped into the Portaloo, jumped back out again. And then suddenly I hit my first hill, and I was like, is this heartbreak? What? And then so I sort of put my legs on, and it wasn't, because there was 1, 2, and then it was heartbreak. But I think actually having that slight shift in elevation, so it wasn't quite just, I guess it was undulating, but sort of quite flat until those hills. Just bloody loved it. And then got back, and we discovered a brewery the day before, and it was just off the finish line. So we went back there for our post-race finish at a really appropriate time of about 2:30 in the afternoon. So just had a ball, really. Felt really great.
It sounds a little bit like a superhero jumping into a Portaloo and then coming out all refreshed and ready to go. So you mentioned Boston, you've done New York, and I think I heard you say there's plans for you to do all 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or however many they end up landing. What's next on the agenda?
So other than the Grand to Grand, also, which I didn't tell you, is a multi-day stage run, which is about 280 kilometers in the desert. The next one after that is the Old Ghost Ultra here in New Zealand. Yep, on Westport. And then our time at Boston secured a qualifying time for me for Chicago 26. So so that's, and Barry, thankfully, he's also, his time that qualified him for Boston, it's also strangely within the same time period of him being able to use it for Chicago as well. So we're just going to put our names in the hat and just hope that not a whole lot of extra fast people decide they want to do that. So yeah, because I'm just, there's just nothing beats a road marathon. I mean, I love the other things that I'm doing as well, but just a marathon hits different. And I know that all you have done all of them, and it's just, it's so amazing. Well, you've done all of them to date, haven't you? I mean, you're just going to have to, I think, what, did they run out of money, do you think? And this is why we're now getting all of these other like majors? I don't know.
I think we've run out of money. And
yeah, actually.
Yeah, I think it's more about them making more money, to be honest. But anyway, so you talk about trail, you talk about road. I know recently you've completed the Southern Lakes Ultra event recently, which is a 7-day, 6-stage, 250K race in Tarazel's backyard in central Otago in New Zealand. How was that, firstly? And secondly, what did you learn about yourself during that? Because was that your first big sort of major stage event?
It was, yeah. So amazing. It was my first multi-day run, and it was the first time I'd run longer than 70Ks in a day as one stage. And it was one of the most transformational runs I've ever done. I can't even describe to you just it. And I think part of it was my expectations were low going in, and I can't even describe why. Like, I think we sort of entered as that'll be fun, the way you do in February, forgetting that you actually have to train and do the event, start November for next February. But we're like, yeah, that'll be great. Then you start training and you're like, what was I thinking? Like questioning a lot of life choices. And then you arrive at the event and you're just like, man, I hope not everyone's just a dick, because you're in a campsite with these people. You're on D-high food. There's very strict rules, albeit Karen is not as strict as she thinks. She's the race director. But over the course of that 6 days, it was, a lot of running, which I'm pretty good at, like just on sort of forestry or 4-wheel drive roads. But then I just had a day in the mountains, and I'm not that great coming down. And I just had one of the worst stages just before we did the big mountain stage, which was supposed to be 75 kilometers, but it ended up being 83 kilometers. And at the end of that stage 4, before that really big day, I just cried and cried and cried as soon as once I hit the finish line for no reason. I couldn't figure out why. Like my whole nervous system had just sort of collapsed, and I was just like, this is not collapse. It's not the right word, but I just had such an emotional response to finishing, and I couldn't figure out how I was going to do that next long day. Like everyone had to do it basically. You could take a shortcut, but at that point you sort of didn't want to. You wanted to do the whole thing. And I think just knowing that everyone was in the same boat and you weren't alone, and Barry and I had run the entire way together, and he was going to do that day with me anyway, but it was just happened that he did. And I woke up and I just did it, and I felt great, like compared to that day before. And I don't know, I think I really learned that I mean, you can do hard stuff, but I really didn't think that I could get on and continue to then be able to get up and run really strong for 83 kilometers and feel really good, and knowing that I was doing it with Barry, and we had our good friends Lucy and Louise doing it, and we were making these amazing friends at the time as well. Like Tara actually was on my podcast for the listeners, and we were chatting, and Tara, you were describing your experience with the marathon tour company, like going to see the same people with the same events. It was like a very intensive like that, but it's very intensive. And we just came away going, I can't even tell you why, but it was the most amazing thing, because we showed up for ourselves and for each other and for everyone else day after day. And your body is amazing and you can do it. Doesn't matter how slow, doesn't matter how fast, doesn't matter how injured, but you sort of get it done. And so yeah, I learned a lot about myself personally, I felt. And nutrition wise was super interesting as well, because we planned, so I run a lower carb approach, one for my gut, and two, I don't think a lot of middle-aged athletes should be chugging down a gel every 25 minutes because it's not great for metabolic health. And that's like a hill I will die on, unless of course you are the elite and you are built differently. And so our carb intake is probably around 25 to 30 grams an hour. And then we have other fuel coming in along the way. And then for that particular event, we had to have all of our food for each day. And so we'd targeted about 2,500 calories to 2,800 calories outside of the actual run event. And so, you'd have your goo chomps and a gel or whatever else. We had a protein bar and biltong or beer sticks actually on the run. And then we'd come in and we chugged down our post race protein shake. We had some wraps, we had pork scratchings, we had radix meals. And so we had plenty of calories, but we didn't just have like 2-minute noodles and really high carb stuff. We had the stuff to really allow for that sort of muscle recovery too. And so, but the one thing that I did learn, because you asked what I learned to him, is that on the rest day, I just ate way too much. And so come the last stage, we had to run 33 kilometers from Arrowtown to Queenstown. I was in the bush like for the first 10K about 5 times going, oh, this is awful. I just ate too much yesterday. But you live and learn, don't you?
Yeah. How spectacular is Arrowtown to Queenstown? I'd imagine it's the same route as the Queenstown Marathon, yeah?
Yeah, very similar. There's a slight difference, but and it is the whole, like if anyone gets an opportunity to go down and run around Arrowtown, around that, I mean, Tara, obviously, like it is the best running.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And look, I mentioned on your podcast how much I love Queenstown Marathon. We've done the half, the full, we've done Motatapu. I would go back and live in New Zealand for 6 months to a year just so that I could do all these races. Like, yeah. All the things that you mentioned, I've got to do that, got to do that. But, it's always the way when you've got something that you want to do and you can't. But with you being a nutritionist by trade, many of our listeners actually really struggle to understand how to effectively fuel. So especially for a long run or race or pre and post race. Have you got any advice for them as a generalized thing? Because I know you said middle-aged runners shouldn't be having too much carbohydrates and stuff, which I totally agree with. And with those that do get stomach problems, what issues do you see consuming nutrition on the run, I guess, apart from like your normal gut issues?
Yeah, nice one, Tara. So, I think with regards to the lead into an event, like, have you guys all got Gold Coast next weekend? Is this you guys? I'm so envious of that. I want to do all of them all in the whole weekend. So that's definitely on my calendar. Anyway, one of the mistakes athletes make is that they're like, great, I've got a carbo load, and they spend the week not running and eating a ton more food, end up at the start line about 5 kgs heavier, wondering why they feel so lethargic and sluggish. And one of the things which I chat to my athletes about first and foremost is tapering is in effect carbo loading, because you're not utilizing your carb stores. So you're not depleting them. So by tapering, you begin your carbo loading. The second thing I say to them is that one of the worst things you can do is arrive at the event start line dehydrated. So just make sure you hydrate, particularly in those 3 days leading up, because you can't come back from dehydration. That is way worse than anything else, because you guys know that it's very difficult to get in any decent amount of fluid when you're actually on the run. You frequently pick everything up at an aid station, but you're not getting in a lot. So you've got to be hydrated going in. And then in the 3 days leading up, I know what I said about, chugging down a ton of carbs, but I do like my athletes to increase their carb intake in the 3 days leading up. But to be honest, I'm not suggesting that anyone go 8 to 10 grams per kilogram body weight per day for 3 days leading up, unless you're an elite, which if you're an elite listening to this, you likely have your own plan and your own nutritionist, so that's fine. But for us, what I suggest more is that we keep protein at the level with which I recommend, which is around 2 grams per kilogram body weight a day. And then with carbs, we might target about 5 grams per kilogram body weight. So someone who might weigh about 80 kilos, that's about 400 grams of carbs, which is still a significant amount. And in fact, for some, it might be a little bit. So if you weigh 60 kilograms, that might be about 240 grams of carbs, but you'll probably be have a bit more than that. And they're easy to digest carbohydrates. So we're thinking rice is excellent for that. Rice cakes, toast or gluten-free toast, something which is like super easy to digest at each meal. Plus, some people are going to need to have like juices or additional sports drink to get in the liquid carbohydrate that's not going to tax the digestive system. We want to keep fat fairly low because fat slows digestion down. And so, if you're chugging into big, lasagnas or something in the couple of days leading up, then that takes ages to digest. So we want to keep the meat is like sort of white or white fish, maybe some salmon. Sushi is great. I generally, if people have gut issues, I suggest staying clear of red meat. I mean, I love red meat in real life, but it's just a bit harder in the digestive system. And then keep fiber super low too. So in everyday life, I eat an abundance of vegetables and tell people to do the same. But I mean, a lot of the gut issues people experience during their event or a long training run isn't necessarily what they're doing that day or that morning. It's sort of the days before. It's the usual diet. So for a race, we keep fiber super low, we keep fat low, we keep carbs and protein higher. And the psychological impact of a meal is almost as much as important as the meal itself. So if someone's like, but I always have steak and eggs before a run, mate, have those steak and eggs. Like, that is what you do. And I wouldn't want to tell you that you shouldn't do that, because it's like wearing your favorite blue socks. So there's an element of individuality, but they would be my general sort of pre-run or pre-event recommendations. And then if I'm thinking about event nutrition, I mentioned that I had about 30 grams of carbs an hour, and that's on the low side. And in fact, there'll be runs where I probably have closer to 45 grams of carbs an hour, like for a slightly higher intensity type event. And then I've got athletes who have anything from sort of 60 to 75 grams of carbs an hour, because one, they can tolerate it, and two, it's an intensity event and they're utilizing that glucose. Whereas if you are slower, or the event itself is maybe got a lot of hiking or that kind of thing, so you're at a lower intensity, then you're not really chewing through that carbohydrate to the same extent as if it was super high intensity. And that's when, other sort of, I suppose, fuel sources like the ones I was mentioning I ate, like that's when things like that can sort of come into play. But if you've got gut related issues during a run, sometimes the most common things are overfueling, and we know 87% of endurance athletes have a gut related issue either during training or racing. So it's trying to get in too many gels, or not tolerating the gels that they're using or the product that they're using. And maltodextrin and fructose are they're two quite common ingredients in products which actually a lot of people don't tolerate. And so they're trying to get too much, and then too much of something like maltodextrin or fructose. So I like to pare it back for athletes, and I even suggest doing some sort of like glucose mix that they do themselves. Get sort of dextrose sugar, put maybe 60 grams, or people put 120 grams in a little flask with some water, and then they have like half of that each hour. So you're having 60 grams of just glucose, which is actually what your body sort of uses. But ultimately, and I did mention the fat metabolism thing at some point earlier, but even the leanest marathon runner has hundreds and thousands of calories of fat stored on their body that they can't access. And in part, it's because if you do rely too heavily on carbohydrate and you haven't trained your body to tap into its own fat stores, then it's like you suppress fat oxidation. And it isn't even this isn't about fat loss. So just to be clear, like it's actually just about building your fat metabolism regardless of your body size. And if you can build your fat metabolism, and you do this by avoiding carbohydrate before training and instead relying on, say, a protein shake, maybe with some peanut butter or something, so you still got calories coming in, and then you don't sort of take in any carbohydrate for the first hour of your run, and then maybe you start at a lower rate than you're used to. Over time, you'll build your ability to burn fat because you need to upregulate those enzymes that do that. And ideally, anyone should be able to run a couple of hours, 2.5 hours without requiring any fuel, and just having, like some like electrolytes, some sugar-free electrolytes. And of course, fueling before, in that instance, I think putting something in the tank beforehand is super important. And of course, restocking with a good old strawberry milkshake post, equally important there. So strategic carbohydrate post-run to get those carbs back in. That's sort of in a nutshell. Tara, I couldn't have said it. I couldn't have talked any quicker or possibly tried to put more in this very sort of short space of time.
No, that was exactly perfect. That was 100% perfect. So, yeah.
Great.
And Mikki, one thing I'm curious about are all these diets like the carnivore diet, the keto, the fasting diets, and the crazes that people think, oh yeah, this will help me being runners. Are you able to help us understand from a runner's perspective, do any of these actually work when it comes to long distance running?
Oh, such a great question, Lucia. And I was like, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think runners are made of slightly different, some runners are really all or nothing. It's like, well, man, if that man's eating a steak, I'm going to go full on carnivore and see what I can do. All of these diets have a real therapeutic basis, I see. A carnivore diet in its strictest sense is the best elimination diet ever. And so for someone who experiences food sensitivities, food intolerances, autoimmune conditions even, like I've seen real success when someone pulls everything out of their diet but meat. Then the gut is healed and their immune system calms down, and then over time they reintroduce foods to allow for a more diverse diet. And that is what an elimination diet should allow you to achieve. But I don't but there's no, it's not, I wouldn't say there's no place for something like that in running, but it's, you know, it's a strange mix, if I'm honest. I think a ketogenic diet is actually, like, I'm low carb. I would be in ketosis a lot of the time, probably when I'm, you know, particularly on long, like if I do training weekends like the one I've done and I don't drink beer, then I would definitely be in ketosis, but I do like a beer. So you know, I do that. But I do think that because the ability to burn fat and utilize your own fat stores is an important part of being a long distance runner, then actually a ketogenic diet can suit long distance running really well. But where people make a mistake is that they go classical ketogenic and they're trying to get like 50 grams or less of carbohydrate a day. They're not thinking about their protein intake because protein turns to glucose. You know, like these are the things they hear. Whereas, in fact, a runner doesn't need to be on paper have a ketogenic diet because they chew through their carbohydrate stores, and that in itself turns their body into being able to burn ketones. So I think that there is a space for a ketogenic diet as an ultra distance runner, but it's also unnecessary too. You know, like you can achieve so much when you have a decent hit of protein in your diet to the amount that I mentioned earlier, and I can repeat it. A good abundance of vegetables and fruit as well. A lot of people don't eat potato because they think they're bad, which just, you know, like, it's just a crazy thing to me. Like, potatoes are high volume. They're of course, they're a source of carbohydrate, but they're, you know, on a plate, they're very high volume for the amount of carbohydrate they provide. And fruit and also things like legumes and lentils are other sources of really good carbohydrate, rolled oats, things like that. And you can incorporate quite a lot of carbohydrate but still be considered lower carb because of the training load and the other aspects of the diet. So I think there is, you know, those other diets that you mentioned, Lucia, they definitely have a therapeutic basis for a range of reasons, which I haven't even talked about. But I think the only one that I think really suits a long distance runner would probably be that lower carb approach.
Mikki, you've got a very positive message, I guess, a very holistic message on your own podcast, where you don't just talk about nutrition, you talk about things like the amount of sleep, weight loss, exercise, etc. It's a great message. So what are some of the tips in respect to that holistic approach to health that you can share with our listeners?
Yeah. Do you know, Tony, I think that one of the big things I talk to a lot of people about is stress, actually. And the pillars of health of, you know, eating a good diet that is minimally processed, that has a lot of the features we just mentioned, exercise that keeps you cardiovascularly fit but also strong. So doing the weight resistance or body weight or weight training is really important. Sleep is our biggest recovery tool as well. So making sleep a priority. And a lot of people want to jump on supplements for that. And in my experience, most people actually just need to change their behavior around devices and around the light environments and things like that. But ultimately, if you can't manage your stress, then it has just these downstream effects on all of these other aspects that we're trying to optimize. And many people just sort of don't ignore it, but almost think that, oh, I thrive in a stressful environment, or they don't recognize that they're stressed and their body language is just emanating it, and they're like, oh, I'm not stressed, you know, like that kind of thing. And when your body is stressed, your stress hormones are elevated, and that tells your brain then tells your liver to dump glucose into your bloodstream in the absence of food, and that has impacts on your blood sugar, on your cravings, on your mood, and on your ability to sleep properly, and then your decision making around food and training and all the rest of it. So I really like to highlight, you know, stress management should be a critical part of anyone's sort of health toolbox, and sleep.
Tara's good at sleep.
Well done, Tara.
Sleep's my favourite thing, apart from running.
Not me. Mikki, one of the problems I have, and I'm pretty sure most other runners will face this at time to time, you go through a really disciplined approach with your training. You eat well, you're exercising well, you're looking after your body, you're getting your massages, you're sleeping well, you're doing all that. You hit your goal event, you have a good time at your goal event, and then you let it all go afterwards. And yo-yo quite a bit. And I find it with myself, I yo-yo quite a bit during the course of a year. I go through a period where I'm losing weight, I'm getting fitter and stronger, then have my race, and then I stack it all on. Firstly, is that good? And secondly, is there any sort of tips you've got? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that sort of yo-yo through the course of the year a couple of times, and progressively fatter and fatter as I get older and older.
Okay, so I would say it is super common. You're right, Tim, and often it's that, you know, because you've been so focused and disciplined, it is really good to be a little bit more flexible when you're able to, because a lot of, you know, we're very structured in how we have to make sure we're sleeping properly and we're doing the massage and we're training, and so your brain is in this, you know, very sort of rigid, ticking the box on all of these things. So I do think it's really great to have a period of flexibility, but I do think there needs to be structure in that flexibility as well. And I think maybe, and I say this to a lot of athletes, you know, it is really normal to gain a couple of kilos maybe of body fat, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But to your point, you don't want to just continue to gain those 1 to 2 kilos, adding to another 1 to 2 kilos. So my suggestion would be, give yourself sort of a week's grace of just, you know, doing the things, and then have a bit of a focus on the off-season stuff. And this is where, I mean, I'm sure you probably already do, but actually getting more into the gym, and maybe you target, like, maybe for you or for anyone who's in your situation, you're like, right, protein preserves muscle mass, and it allows me to burn more calories when I eat more protein, because it is the most metabolically favorable nutrient. So merely by eating protein, you're burning more calories, albeit small, but it still makes a difference. And you're like, right, I'm going to be super focused on maybe, you know, 24 of my eating opportunities across, you know, the week. And then I'm going to have a couple of meals where it doesn't even matter what I eat, and I can just really enjoy myself. But you shift that dedication and focus to something else, like your protein and your strength training, for example. So I just think a couple of anchors allow you to maybe, you know, be not quite as dialed in, but still allows you a place to come home to, you know. And so when it does come time to sort of dial in that 12-week training program to your next event, you feel like you're stronger, and you've got, you know, your diet may be dialed in a way that's only going to be helpful. So I think that can be super helpful. But I do think a period of flexibility is really key to us continuing in our love of the sport, right? Because you can't just grind all year round.
No, and I like the concept of a pre-season. It's probably a lot more Tony's got a blank look on his face, but we talk about, or Tony talks about, a pre-week before you start your training program. But I think a pre-season is more approachable.
For what it's worth, I talked about the fat metabolism and the building that machinery, metabolic machinery. A really great time to do it is pre-season, right? In your base training, because man, your runs take a hit. If you're used to having peanut butter on toast or peanut butter and jam on toast before you go out for a long run, and I whip that out from you, you are gonna suffer. But if you go in knowing that, and your expectations are managed, and over time you start seeing the benefit, you know, like, this is why it's actually important to do that metabolic work before you hit your key training sessions. I would never suggest someone 6 weeks out from a marathon go, well, I'm key into my intervals and my really long runs, and I'm going to whip out my carbs. Don't do that, people. Just wait for the appropriate time.
No, because Tony and I are firm believers of pre-weeks, and Tim, it's a constant battle, but very glad to hear that you're on board with a pre-season / pre-week type of mentality. I just want sorry, Tony.
Yeah, and Mikki, it's about the mental approach to attacking your training block as well. So it's mental, it's physical, it's about that preparation of getting ourselves right for a training block. So nice. Thanks for the support.
You're welcome, Tony.
And one thing I just wanted to touch a bit further on was protein, because it's so important with the repairing of the muscles post running. How much and how long after your run should you have? Because I know I'm guilty. Sometimes I can go like a few hours without eating after a run. But when's the optimal time?
Yeah, great question, Lucia. And what we know is total protein matters rather than timing out of everything else. Unless someone was running a calorie deficit, meaning they were manipulating their calories to lose weight, and so eating less calories than they were expending in a day. Other than that scenario, then really, as long as across the day you're getting in the recommended amount of protein, you should be all right. But of course, there are always caveats, right? So as older individuals, all of us, we're all middle-aged, we need, like, our brain needs more protein in one meal for it to get the signal that it's got enough protein on board to help muscles recover properly. And so protein contains these amino acids, and it's the amino acid leucine that does the job. It initiates it, and all the other amino acids sort of come along and help. So I threw out 2 grams of protein per kg body weight as a recommended amount for us endurance athletes. That would be probably slightly higher than maybe, I think 1.8 was one I saw in a most recent research paper, but let's just say 1.8 to 2 grams per kilo of either body weight or ideal body weight. And then you would want to structure that across 3 or 4 different meals in the day, and you would want at least 2 meals, ideally breakfast and dinner, that would have around at least 40 grams of protein in that meal. Now, that isn't 40 grams of meat or 40 grams of fish. That is 40 grams of protein, and it is the equivalent of 100 and about 40 grams cooked red meat, lean red meat, or it is the equivalent of about 5 eggs or a double serve of a protein shake. And it needs to be sort of, that's how I would bookend my day. And look, when you look at a steak, particularly you Aussies, because I know that you guys love a good steak, like you'll look at 140 grams cooked and go, that's not a lot. And it's true, it isn't. So I'm not limiting you to that. But what I know of women particularly is that we're very much like, oh, it's a bit much, or might just, take a little bit off. So I really encourage people to avoid doing that. And the other thing I will say about protein, the way that both Kiwis and Aussies eat generally is that we have like toast or wheat bix in the morning, or porridge with nothing else. And then lunch, if we're quote, quote, good, it'll be like a chicken salad. But if we're not good, it'll be like a filled roll or a pie or, something. And then at dinner time, we'll get a decent hit of protein. But so in that scenario, you get next to no protein across the day, and then you're hitting it all at dinner. And even when you think you're focusing on protein, it might be a protein smoothie in the morning, but that's just 20 grams of protein. And again, it might be that same chicken salad at lunch. But we have actually, because protein's expensive, we sort of like, if you purchase something like that out, you don't get a lot. You get, if you go to Fishbowl, for example, like they do good on the large sizes, but like their sort of standard sizes are, might be 80 grams as opposed to the 140 that I sort of suggested. So it does take some sort of planning and preparation, but you just feel so much better. And in addition to the repair and recovery of our muscles, which are being broken down every single step we take when we run, protein helps manage your appetite. And I know so many runners who gain weight when they train for a marathon because they are hungry, because they've done the work and they don't eat enough protein. So they're just sort of chowing, either not eating enough or they're predominantly eating carbohydrate because we're runners and we need it, but that's shooting their blood sugar up, crashing it down and making them crave food. So they're eating more than they need. And that's another reason why protein is excellent, because it can help regulate your appetite, manage your cravings, and keep your blood sugar stable.
Mikki, that is an amazing way to think about it as well, because then you've got nutritionally, you've got the right foods in your body. You're keeping your blood sugars level so that you're not spiking up and down. And you're also probably going to be wanting to drink more hydration and liquids, because the protein you're going to need to absorb as well, so, and flush it all through. So that's an amazing chat, and I really, really appreciate all of your time and your knowledge that you've given to our listeners, because what you've just given everybody is priceless. So thank you so much for that chat. We are running out of time, but I do want to go through a few more bits and pieces with you, if that's all right.
Of course.
I'm going to get Tony to ask you a few questions, and these are very fast questions and very fast answers. So I'll let you go through with it, but there we go.
Amazing. A bit nervous, but I've been waiting for this.
So, Mikki, basically 7 questions, because there are 7 major marathons at the moment. So next year it's likely to be the Fast 8, and the year after that the Fast 9, and then hopefully they pull up stumps then, because I can't think of any more questions that are really quick. So first one, let's go. Podcast or music?
Podcast.
Best running advice ever given to you?
You'll never be a good runner.
What advice would you give to someone starting out?
Start with couch to 5K.
Yes.
Uphill or downhill?
Uphill.
Yes.
Oh, Mikki. He does that every time. There's Tim is very consistent, so I'll say that.
I'm an uphill runner as well. I don't
love it.
get the concept of going downhill. It doesn't make sense.
No.
Gels or blocks?
Blocks.
Favorite shoes to run in?
Clifton's.
And what is one word that you would use to describe your running journey to date?
Just joy. Just
excellent.
All of it.
Thank you so much.
Very good answers. Thank you very much, Mikki. So we're going to get a tip from Tim, because he apparently is our resident expert in tips.
Love it.
Thanks, Tara. My tip's very simple this week. I know we're running out of time, but it's very simple. You are definitely what you eat, and whatever you put into your body will impact upon your running performance. We've heard Mikki talk about it tonight on the show, about what you need to do to eat right, but eating the right foods, and more importantly, the right volumes of foods, will improve your performance. And the best way to learn about that is to get some help from a nutritionist or a sports dietitian who can actually tailor a program specifically to you. I know Tara and we've had a sports dietitian in the past who's provided us with a lot of great advice and some eating programs that we've put in place, and even some carbo loading tips as well. So definitely get the right advice from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Go out there and eat the right foods, and you'll see your journey improve even further out there on the track. So that's my tip this week.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Tim. And Mikki, we'll give you a plug at the end as well, but you can actually reach out to Mikki if you do need nutritional advice from a proper runner as well. So what we have next week going on there, Lucia, you're going to be our host, so you can let us know.
Well, can you believe next week the Flying Runner podcast turns 2, but instead of having a party, what we're going to do is recap Goldie weekend. How we all went. Did we make the quaddie? Did I survive the quaddie? How much stuff do I buy? Well, how much stuff do I buy at the expo? But basically, we're just going to share our experiences with how it went. Did it go to plan? Anything we learned? Because Goldie is always such a good weekend, and so we can't wait to recap it. And hopefully we'll see as many of our listeners up on the Goldie as possible. If you see any of this, please come and say hi. That would be fantastic. Yeah, so next week we're going to be talking about Goldie, our recap.
Thank you so much, Lucia. We are looking forward to the Gold Coast, that's for sure. So, Mikki, I really appreciate you being on with us tonight. Thank you so much. I know I've learned a lot more and reinforced what I already know as well, so that's great. We hope you've enjoyed being on here with us as well. And if just for all our listeners, do you want to yell out where we can find you or where they can find you?
Amazing. Thank you to all 4 of you for such a fun chat. And I know I talk a lot, so you guys did a really great job to rein me in. You can find me over on Instagram at Mikki Williden. I'm super active, and I, try and respond to all of my messages over there. You can also find me on the web at mikkiwilliden.com, where if you're interested in a more personalized approach, you can book a call with me. I have plans along there as well, including an athlete plan that you can just purchase and follow through with access to me via a messaging portal. And also the Wikipedia podcast that Tara has been on and that you guys mentioned at the start. And I'm like you guys, I'm just a super geek when it comes to running, and also all things nutrition, longevity, fitness, and health and mindset and things like that. But thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been such a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it.
We've really appreciated it. Thank you so much, Mikki. You really, really have. So, guys, on that note, it's time to wrap things up. Hope you have a great time tonight and listening to us. And I can't wait to catch up with all of my Flying Runner hosts at the Gold Coast next week. Mikki, you're going to have to come over one year and catch up with us.
Love to.
Absolutely. We love making this podcast for our listeners. Let us know what you think. Message us on Instagram, Facebook, or email us at happyrunning@flyingrunner.com. And if you've got any running tips, we'd love to hear them. You can also watch this episode on Spotify and YouTube, or listen to us on Apple, Amazon, and all other major podcast platforms. Every step counts. Keep running. And until then, we'll see you next time on the Flying Runner podcast. Happy running.
Happy running.
Happy running.